Welcome to the Living Ageless and Bold podcast. Each episode, I bring you amazing women who inspire, educate, and share their experiences and journeys along the way. So grab a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, find a cozy spot, and let's relax and have some fun hearing what can be accomplished after 55. Hey, everybody. Super interesting topic that we're going to have today. We've talked about it a little on some past episodes, but my guest today is Keswin. She is a workplace strategist, and we've talked a lot about women in the workplace over 50. She has written 3 Wall Street Journal bestselling books. Let's see, Bring Your Human to Work, Rituals Roadmap, and the Retention Revolution, 7 surprising and very human ways to keep employees connected to your company. Which is very important in our post-COVID world. Welcome, Erica. I'm so glad you're here with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So it's been an interesting conversation that we've had with various guests. And really, I'm 56 and I have a lot of friends. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, kind of accidentally, but my friends in corporate who are 51, 52, who are getting pushed out. I mean, they are getting laid off. Which is astounding to me because we have so much to bring to the workplace. But I want to talk to you more about that. Like, why don't they get it? Why don't they get the value that we have?
It is kind of crazy. This just happened to someone I know where she and a couple of other colleagues got pushed out. And I've been hearing this more and more. And I am surprised. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised on it, but we're live in general, right? We have many 4 to 5 generations working under one roof in some cases. People are living longer and working longer. And so 51, 52, 55, we got a lot of years left. And the other thing that this friend of mine said at the time when she was dealing with this, she said, I'm an empty nester. I have so much time on my hands. I can travel. I don't have to be at soccer practice and at pickup. So I don't really get it. In a positive way, though, I think that the other thing that will allow smart companies to leverage all of these different generations is technology, that you can use the technology to swap shifts. You can use the technology to figure out a way to maybe have some people that did retire that want to dip their toe back in, or maybe they're reluctant retirees that they don't want to retire because they feel like they're going to miss out on that purpose. But there's a way to keep them connected to the company just a couple days a week in a way that works for everybody. So I don't know. I think it's a lot of missed opportunities right now.
Right. And I mean, is there anything we can do? Like I said, I have so many friends, and you obviously are running into this too. And being a lifelong entrepreneur, when I met my husband, he came from a very conventional family. His dad was a banker. His granddad was a banker. And I'm like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. And I used to always say to him, Steve, don't worry. I'll get a job. I can go find a job. This is not going to be hard. And now 30 years later, and I'm 56, I'm like, I don't know that I can go find a job anymore. Like, good thing this entrepreneurial thing worked out for me. But, let's say you're, like you said, empty nester. So many of my friends are like, they're ready to go to work, to have a purpose. When you go to these interviews, how can you stand out so they're not, poo-pooing you that you're over 50 and you want a job? Like, is there a way to stand out?
Well, I think it's a tricky time it depends on obviously what the role is and what, like if you have spent your career building up the depth of expertise, either within an industry or with a function, I would lead with that, because at the end of the day, if there's certain things to do and you have the expertise to do it, that will at least get you in the door and then be having the conversation. And then I would consider, almost addressing the elephant in the room to say, look, I know you might have a lot of different candidates, but here's the deal. I plan on working for the foreseeable future, and I have nothing keeping me around. So I am flexible. You need me to get on a plane, I can get on a plane. You need me to stay late, I can stay late. And I think it's a shift in thinking. And maybe, we need to chat on a different day when we're not recording a podcast. But I think we need to start sharing these stories. And we need to find these women, share the stories of where they did take these roles and they just crushed it. Because I think it's just the beginning.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And the great thing is women our age aren't afraid to walk in a room and say that. Where I mentor so many college students and just trying to get them through that first interview when they are just a wreck. Like they just, I remember my daughter is 23 and she had her interview and she called and she's like, Mom, they didn't ask me anything work related. It was just this really cool conversation. And I said, oh, you got the job. And she's like, no. It was just weird. Like these kids just think that an interview has to be this question and this question. And if you don't have that, they're like, oh, I didn't get the job. Where, as we know, you have the job or people. Like it's people who lead, people who run projects. You've got to be able to be personable in a work setting.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. So I think we need to make the case.
Yeah.
We need to make the business case.
I like that. Maybe we'll do a whole podcast just on bringing these amazing women out into the forefront. I know your expertise is technology. And again, I have kids at that age, 23 and 25. So seeing how they are experiencing the new workforce. And we do have a lot of younger people who listen too. So this is great. We've got the over 50s, but then we're inspiring a lot of younger people too. But I know my son graduated in May 2020 and had a job in finance in New York. We all know what happened with New York. And he lived at home for 8 months, not knowing when he was going to be called to New York. So he couldn't even find roommates and, live in the DC area. And so he was the first wave in. He was like, I want to go in. I want to see people. And we keep talking to so many people. We ran into one of his friends who's now out of college 3 years, has never met anyone he works with. Like never personally met anybody. So I'd love to know, yes, we have technology, we have this, we have Zoom, but what's going to happen to our workforce if we don't have this human engagement and interaction?
I'm seeing a shift of people of all ages wanting to not be in the office 5 days a week. But, I'm actually working on this article right now. It's almost like the human case of leaving the house. Number one, people are lonely and isolated. Number two, the friend session that, people aren't connecting and making friends with people. Number three, they're not developing on the job because they're not, that the old back in the day apprenticeship model where I watched you and I learned from hearing and seeing you. It's just different and having these spontaneous conversations. And so, I'm a very big believer in designing days in the office that are worth the commute, that we don't need people coming in. If a company has a strategy where you're coming in a couple days a week, what we don't want is people, saying to all the young people, okay, come in, and everybody just be on your laptops in your own corners, not connecting with anyone. Right. Now, you might bump into somebody in the elevator and okay, that's fine. But it's really about curating connection on those days and realizing that the bonding and the connecting is part of the work. Having set times to do learning and development, having set times to do your one-on-one and doing your strategy work, and really just being strategic about what kinds of work should you be doing when you're in person, which should you be doing when you're not in person. That all would require people being co-located near an office. So it's starting with looking at your business strategy and your people strategy. And I had one company that made a statement saying, okay, we're coming back in the office 3 days a week. And then they looked around and they're like, oh, shoot, 30% of our people were COVID transplants and moved. So, I think that is, you really have to start with that. And then I have other companies saying, look, we now realize that we're seeing a degradation of our culture, and that as we hire people going forward, we're going to make sure they live within a certain radius unless it is such a unique skill set that we can't find this person.
Yeah, it's so important. I told both my kids that. My daughter actually wanted a job where she went in 5 days a week, and they're pretty flexible, 4 days. They're fine with that. And my son, like I said, he he took that first wave in. He, got the COVID shot right when it came out so he could go in. And when you're talking Wall Street, and here's a kid who just got out of college, and this whole middle group didn't show up. So he had access to like his boss's bosses. I mean, you can't trade that for anything. I mean, I said, you're connected with these people forever now to have access that you never would have had. And it's really important for, the people are like, yeah, I don't want to go in. That my husband was in a group with an attorney, and the attorney said, if I'm walking down the hall, I'm going to grab the associate in the office right there to work on this case versus going on Zoom, picking up the phone. Who wants to work on this? So those people are going to advance a lot faster, whether we like it or not. There is a reality to that.
Yeah, but agree. But let's talk about this then, because what I worry sometimes is that, yes, you're going to grab the associate next to you. Proximity bias is real. And then we're also talking about all these women. So one of the things I think about a lot is if you have a company that, again, let's say has a 3-day-a-week policy of coming into the office, and more of the women are taking advantage of that flexibility and coming in for the 3 days, and let's say more of the men are coming in for 5 days. One of the things I worry about is fast forward, there's going to be this huge, increasingly large gap between, how the women can move ahead. So one of the things I think about is proximity bias is real. I do think depending on where you are in your career, you want to err on the side of showing up in person. That being said, we need to almost rethink the systems of how we give out projects to make sure that all of the projects are not just given out based on bumping into somebody or grabbing the person in the office next to you. That if we say we have a certain policy and certain people given their own, it might not just be women with kids, but somebody with elderly parents or whatever
Sure.
it is, that we need to say, great, this is the flexibility, this is what we're offering it, but let's also make sure that we are thinking about this through the lens of equity in terms of how we're giving out projects.
And I know you consult with a lot of huge companies. I saw there's some amazing logos on your website. Are you seeing this? Like what trends are you seeing in the workplace now, almost 2 years post-COVID?
Specifically as it relates to the flexibility piece?
Yeah, just in like, what are the trends? Are more people coming in, than Twitter X and nobody's coming in the office anymore, and then everybody's coming in? And are you seeing this hybrid more? And is it working maybe better than what we had before COVID?
It's so tricky because you try to get data on this stuff, and there's so much clickbait as it relates to the articles and the studies, because everybody wants you to think, they post something, no one's going in, and we're being made to go in, and all this stuff. I think that, most companies will be hybrid in some way, shape, or form. I think the days are, except for a few companies, I don't think many people will ever go back to being in the office on Friday. Some people
not a bad thing.
It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
But as we think about flexibility and putting a stake in the ground of whatever our policies are, we also need to make sure that we're thinking about how we are measuring performance, because so many people, right or wrong, measured performance by walking around. And that's, one of the things that happened during COVID. People were like, I'm walking around, nobody's here. And so there's that piece combined with this idea of we can't assume that people aren't working just because we can't see them. So how are we really measuring productivity, performance, creativity? I'm hearing more from companies that people are just as if not more productive being at home. But we are starting to lose the creativity and innovation, which completely makes sense. Like Zoom is good for certain things, and you can have one-on-ones. Like we're having a perfectly fine, hopefully better than fine conversation here right now. But as you start to add more people to the mix and manage groups, doing it virtually just is not the same.
Right. And I couldn't imagine like an advertising company. How do you come up with that? Right. You just, you're not all in a room together and, that. And, there's for sure the creativity piece. It's really interesting. And when you say, like being in the office. So when I was in my 20s, I was an entrepreneur. I did event planning. I got married and it was like, oh, I need a job. Can't be an entrepreneur as a young wife. But so I went to work for my old business partner's dad. He did a lot of court work in eminent domain. And it's like, we worked if you had a court case or, that's what we did. And you might have to do a 12-hour day. And then he'd be like, okay, well, there's nothing going on tomorrow. Take the time off. And he retired. And the new guy came in. He's like, oh, no, you work 8:30 to 5:30. You take 30 minutes for lunch. And the whole team, all of our productivity gone. Like we were just like, what are you talking about? So I think that's a really positive change in that you don't have to be at an office 8 hours a day to be productive, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And I think there are positive things that came out of the pandemic that we can do. We did many of the knowledge workers did everything from home for all that time. So we know that certain things can be done from home. We did them well, but it doesn't mean that we always should. So the real question is, let's just be strategic and let's figure out what should we do in the office? What should we do on the days that we're home? And, I talk about in the book, there's, I have an acronym, which is where I sort of frame flexibility, that leaders need to ace flexibility. So the A stands for agency or autonomy. How can we give pretty much every job some agency or autonomy over her schedule? And I think where there's a will, there's a way. I have an example in the book where there is a Neiman Marcus sales associate role that you would never think could work from home. Next thing you know, everybody goes home in the pandemic and the stores are closed and Neiman Marcus rethinks these roles. And if you're a sales associate at a high-end store, a couple hours a week, you need to put new fashions on Instagram and you need to text or email clients. You're not going to work from home 4 days a week, but for a couple hours a week, it can be fine. And that actually can make all the difference to do a few appointments, sleep in, go to the gym, take your kid to school. The C in ACE is curating connection, making sure that you're not just coming in and sitting by yourself, staring at a wall, doing exactly what you could be doing from home. And then the E is the equity piece. We want to think about it through the lens of equity, even though it won't all be equal.
But it's never been equal. I mean, it's the world we live in. It's, it's not black and white. There's gray. So, and I don't even know if you know an answer to this, but with all of everything going on with AI, ChatGPT, things like that, how do you see the workplace changing? Yeah. And same thing, is the hybrid, is the person, I'm getting really good at ChatGPT, really good. And I've started from the beginning. And so I can whip things out at home. Let's say I was working for a company, probably much faster than somebody who doesn't know it. So I'm just curious what you think about the future of AI in the workplace.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been seeing and hearing about in companies is that the key for all of us with our jobs is to really understand how to interact with AI. So for example, a radiologist isn't going to lose her job because of AI, but a radiologist who doesn't know how to interact with AI will. And so what I am seeing, and it makes me hopeful, is that the human skills are that much more important. You need them earlier in your career as AI has come into the picture, because if AI is doing some of the analytical work that you might have done, or somebody that works for you might have done, that then is being done by your new AI assistant. And then the next level person needs to be able to have the analytical skills and the influence skills to maybe influence people on your team to choose one of the three things that ChatGPT has spits out. And so it really is understanding how critical those human skills are, making sure that we give people the training and elevating the importance of those skills and giving them practice to use it.
Yeah, I'm finding I do a lot of work at my alma mater, and the colleges don't know what to do with it. And they're trying to ban it from the kids using it, which you're never going to be able to do. It's not going away. So we were just saying, how do we bring it into the workplace? How do we bring it into the college atmosphere? So it's not cheating, it's not stealing, it's, understanding what it is and how. I have just found that it makes me better. I can come up with an idea and I use it almost as like a creative partner right next to me. Like, well, what do you think about this? And what if we did this? And then give me some ideas. And then it's like, oh, this is so good. So
Oh my God, that's it. No, it's great. Well, it's funny. Two things that jumped out with on the college front. I'm sure many of your listeners have kids in college. My one friend, her daughter called her in a total panic the other day, saying that there are a few kids, like I guess in the back of this big lecture, that were supposedly using ChatGPT, and they're going to mess up the curve. And so they were basically cheating. And I said to my friend, I was like, look, well, there's always been people that cheat, like always. So they're just cheating with ChatGPT. And there's always been people that snuck in little papers to screw up the curve. So that's nothing new other than a new medium. But then the other example is my son is a freshman in college, and his writing seminar is writing with AI. So like that's the goal is to write with AI, and his whole class is about learning how to use it.
I love that. And it's really it's not a bad thing. I think people are so afraid of it. Again, if you use it, they have to understand that they're sourcing data so somebody else wrote it. So you can't plagiarize. You can't, you don't want to steal what somebody else has copyrighted or is their work. But again, I like using it as a creative assistant, and even writing, like, give me some ideas of how to flush out this idea, which I think it only can make us better in college, in the workplace, anywhere. Like I said, it's not going away.
No, it is not.
No. So let's talk a little bit more, because your one book is relatively new, correct?
Yeah, The Retention Revolution came out in September.
Okay. So obviously, and we've talked about it a little bit, but, what are like the top 3 things you're seeing again? And this is all very, post-COVID, that changed the world. It changed everything.
Yep. So interestingly, many of the trends that I write about in the book, they were not brand new, but they were accelerated during the pandemic. So even when I wrote Bring Your Human to Work in 2018, I wrote about, X amount of people are going to be working remote by 2020 or 20, so whatever it was. And then all of a sudden overnight, boom, it's everybody. So it wasn't altogether new, but like we had to address it all overnight. But the big picture idea in the book is that it's kind of where you started the questions with 4 or 5 generations of people working in the workplace, living longer, working longer. New generations are looking at their careers very differently. Gone are the days where, people are staying with one company, even 2, 3, or 4 companies. They're looking at their career more like a portfolio. So if companies understand that and can kind of address that early during onboarding, and to say, you want to try to connect people early and often with your values and your mission to get them up to speed and engage quickly. And then while people are with you, help them develop up, down, and sideways. Gen Z, the newest generation in the workplace, a Gallup study found that even more important than compensation is their desire to grow and develop on the job. And if there aren't as many rungs in the ladder, you need to get creative about how to give them opportunities and projects, around and across the organization. And then when the person comes to you and says, Christina, I am leaving, the goal then is to take a deep breath and try to refrain from you're dead to me, don't let the door hit you, because the retention revolution is all about keeping your employees connected. And so how do we professionalize our offboarding? How do we get creative about how to keep people connected through, whether it's inviting them to be part of ongoing learning and development, whether maybe the company has a website, they have quarterly get-togethers, whatever it is. We are seeing so many boomerangs, people that left because they thought the grass was greener and it was actually brown, or people are in a new life stage and maybe they want to work part-time or figure out just creative ways to stay connected. And if you don't leave gracefully, it's going to be hard to bring those people back in any capacity. So it sort of is related to even the first part of our conversation about, the women and being older and trying to figure out how to stay relevant in these companies.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that. My daughter is in a job she loves, and she has 4 roommates who are in jobs they don't love, and they make a lot of money, and she doesn't make a lot of money. And the person above her was terminated, and she took that role, but because it's a big company, she's not technically allowed to have that role. And I get frustrated for her because it's big corporate. And it's like, these companies need to figure out, here you've got a great employee who loves her job, and all she's asking for is to get the title of the work she's already doing. You
Right.
know, you're like, hello, but it's such a big company. They don't see that. That's why it's great.
Because
There's people like
they're
you.
saying just because she doesn't have X amount of years of experience,
Yes,
they won't give
right.
it. Did she get any bump in responsibility, or is she? I mean, in terms of compensation.
A little bit. So what they did is they kind of moved her here to try to get, her boss loves her. And again, they keep, it's just the system, it's the process. And a lot of these big companies need to get with the program, like you're saying, and, keep these people, because most of them are going to bounce anyway. I see my friends' kids, they're working and then like a year and they're taking a sabbatical. They go to Asia or Europe for 3 months and come back and find another job and then make money for a year, and then they go do it again.
Oh my gosh, it's so different. I would tell your daughter, though, I would say, don't, at the end of the day, I wouldn't worry so much about the title. It stinks not to have it. But if you're getting the recognition, if you're getting the real responsibility at the end of the day, that's what's going to help you going forward. And hopefully getting the acknowledgement and getting some of the compensation piece that, at the end of the day, you'll get it eventually. But
it will
the flip
come.
side is that I tell companies that I'm like, titles are free. What are you doing? But
she does feel very appreciated. So that's good, where a lot of people don't. It's just the red tape to get through it.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. And you said that, we were just talking about the other night about this generation is so like you said, the grass is greener over there. It's greener over there. It's like, it's really not like, but everybody, all the helicopter parents, and everyone wants to fix everything. And like, oh no, we're going to make your life better. So, but you've got to figure out failure and hard. Jobs are hard. Life is hard. It's
right. Work is work. But I would say, and you can also tell your daughter, 80% of the people that leave jobs, it's because of their boss, their manager. And so if you have a good boss, much of the rest of it will get worked out. And that's why on the company side, a big focus of mine, there's a chapter in the book that's called Managers Are Having a Moment, and how this is a moment to elevate and celebrate managers and give them the skills to actually manage. Because it's always been hard to be a manager, but never as much as it is now. With the new generation trying to understand what they want and who they are, and deal with all of the post-COVID, issues surrounding people that came into the workforce during that time. And then, if you're a manager in a company and you're going from 2 days in the office to 4 days, they say, okay, Christina, you're the manager. You go tell everybody.
Right.
Cool.
Oh, great.
It's hard.
Well, and then I thought too, during COVID, a lot of the people, late 40s, early 50s, who were in managerial roles took early retirement. Like, I don't want to go back. And it pushed these younger people up that probably weren't ready to do it. So that puts a whole nother twist on all of this.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And where do you see it going? I know you said, okay, so Fridays, no more Fridays, but like long term, do we need to get these young people in more with older people? It's like, I love when you're talking about like the generational, the 5 generation. What you can learn, what a 25-year-old can learn from a 50, 60-year-old, even a 70-year-old is unbelievable.
Yeah. I think it's going to only something like 20% of people want to be fully remote and 20% want to be fully in the office. Most people want a little bit of flexibility. And I think where it's going to ultimately play out is it's going to be self-selection, that younger people are going to say, and my kids have done it, like, I don't want to work at that company. You never come in the office. There's one of the big consulting firms that I won't name, but a lot of my friends' kids have said it's not a great culture because there's no coordinated way people are in the office. And so I think I'm starting to see the pendulum swing back a little, that this being home all the time thing is getting kind of old.
Right.
For many people. So, but if you do bring people in, you need to make sure that senior people are there, that they are engaged. It goes back to the basics, that just because you're bringing them in the office doesn't mean that their lives and their learning and that everything's going to get better. You got to make sure that you do that in conjunction with having leaders that are actually going to lead and manage.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time, a fascinating topic. But yeah, thank you so much for all of that. And it's going to be interesting to see. It sounds like we have kids about the same age, to see how, the next 5-10 years play out, and women our age. Like, again, I think it's such a disservice to these younger people not having our experience and, the things that we can share with them. Okay, so we end every episode with the same 2 questions. What is the greatest thing that you have accomplished since you turned 50?
Written 3 books.
All 3 were after you turned 50?
Yeah, I remember I went away for my 50th birthday, which is in May, and I wasn't going to go because I had so much going on. I go away once a year by myself, and I was like, oh, I can't go. And I'm like, you know what? Forget it. If there's ever a year to go, it's this year. And yeah, my book came out in September of that year. So all 3 books in 5 years, 50 to 55.
Wow, congratulations. And I just have to add on, because I'm really curious. You say you go away once a year by yourself. I have a really good friend who lost her husband a little over a year ago, and she did some traveling by herself and came back and said, everybody should do this. It was, she said, transformational for her. So tell us a little bit about that.
I've been doing it. I go by myself, but there are other people where I go. I go to some different places, but when my twins were 2 and my son was a newborn, when he was 6 months old, I was done nursing, and I was like, you know what? I just need to clear my head and get a break. And my friends were like, what are you doing? I can't even imagine being able to do that. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to do it to be able to, just
survive.
White mom,
yeah.
Everybody, everything. And so I usually go to some type of a, retreat with hiking and meditation and maybe a massage or a facial thrown in there. But yeah, I get up every morning and I hike, and then, I'm not great at meditating, but to me, if I'm really physical, it just helps me clear my head. But yeah, I've been doing it my son is 18. So I've been doing it for 18 years.
Wow. Good for you. The more I hear this, the more I'm inspired to do something. That's great. Okay. And then where do you see yourself in 10 years?
10 years. 10 years, I would say, hopefully a decent golfer, which I have been trying to do. That as my new plan. Starting this year, I've dabbled in it, and I was like, all right, if I don't commit some actual hours to it, I am, it's going to be a problem. And, gosh, in the next 10 years.
Well, if you wrote 3 books in 5 years, any more books in you?
No, I mean, maybe a very different kind of book, but no, I think it's more my next act is really taking what I'm calling this human workplace trilogy, and saying, okay, what can I do with it to really make an impact? Because 3 books in 5 years, it's the spinning, and you're constantly getting, stories and anecdotes. And not that I won't keep doing that, but I do think that the content is evergreen. This idea of why a more human workplace is good for people and great for business. So, I don't think it's going to go out of style, but it's more about let's figure out how to take it and really get it to as many people as I can.
Good for you. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was really great conversation.
Yeah, well, so great to chat, and we'll have to continue to chat about our kids and helping them navigate their world in this retention revolution.
Yeah, that might be a whole panel discussion we do and bring a lot of people in. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening or for watching this episode of Living Ageless and Bold. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit subscribe. And if you like the episode, I hope that you will give us a great review. You can also head over to livingagelessandbold.com and sign up for information, inspiration, and exclusive opportunities for us, women over 55. Thanks for listening. And remember, no matter what you do, keep living ageless and bold.